The galaxy had 4,000 spacefaring species. Humanity was the youngest of them all. For 60 years, humans had been part of the galactic concord. They had joined with hope in their hearts and dreams of friendship among the stars. But the aliens did not share these dreams. To them, humans were nothing more than clever animals who had stumbled upon faster-than-light travel by accident. Ambassador Vance walked through the great halls of Prime, the capital world of the galactic concord. The building was enormous. Its ceilings rose so high that clouds actually formed inside. Species from across the galaxy moved through the corridors. Some floated, some crawled, some walked on dozens of legs. All of them ignored the small human woman in her simple black uniform. Was used to this treatment. She had served as Earth's ambassador for 15 years. In all that time, not a single species had treated humanity as equals. They called humans infant in their official documents. In private, they used worse names. Today was the annual military review. Every species would show off their fleets and weapons, knew what would happen. It was the same every year. She entered the vast council chamber and took her seat at the very back. Humanity's seat was the smallest and the farthest from the central platform. This was not by accident. The High Commander, a tall creature with silver scales and 4 arms, stepped onto the platform. His name was Oran, and he commanded the largest fleet in the Concord. He began to speak about his people's mighty warships. Behind him, holographic images showed thousands of gleaming vessels. The Dominion maintains 12,000 capital ships, Oran announced proudly, each one capable of destroying a small moon. The gathered delegates made sounds of approval. They were respected, they were feared. Next came then a dozen other species. Each one boasted about their military power. Each one showed off weapons that could crack planets and tear holes in space itself. Finally, an official looked at his data pad and sighed. And now, the human delegation will present their fleet. Quiet laughter rippled through the chamber, stood and walked to the platform. She kept her face calm and her back straight. The United Earth Federation maintains 47 vessels, she said. Her voice did not shake. Most are converted cargo ships fitted with basic weapons. The laughter grew louder. Oran leaned over to another commander and spoke in a voice just loud enough for to hear. 47 garbage haulers, how precious. Perhaps they can deliver our supplies. Finished her brief presentation and returned to her seat. Her hands were steady, but inside her heart burned with anger. 60 years of this. 60 years of mockery and scorn. But knew something the aliens did not. Far away at the edge of the Sol system, something was happening in secret. Past the orbit of Neptune, past the frozen dwarf planets in the dark and empty cloud, humanity had built something. They had been building it for 40 years. Admiral stood on a platform inside the largest construction bay ever created by human hands. He was 73 years old, but his eyes were sharp, and his mind was sharper. He had dedicated his entire life to this project. Before him floated the UES Defiance. The ship was 12 kilometers long. Its hull was black as the void between galaxies, covered in angles and planes that seemed to drink in light itself. Massive weapon batteries lined its sides like the spines of some ancient predator. At its heart, a reactor burned with the power of a captured star. "Status report," Admiral said. A young officer beside him checked her tablet. "All primary systems are online, sir. The quantum lattice armor has finished self-calibration. Helios cannons are charged and ready. The Athena network is fully operational. Drone bays are loaded with 50,000 units." Nodded slowly, "And the fold space drive?" "Ready for testing, sir. Engineering says we can jump anywhere in the galaxy instantly. No hyperspace lanes, no detection." The Admiral allowed himself a small smile. For 40 years, humanity had pretended to be weak. They had accepted the insults and the mockery. They had let the galaxy believe they were primitive and harmless. But humans had never stopped working, never stopped building, never stopped preparing. Thought about the message they had intercepted 40 years ago. A secret Concord transmission, meant only for the highest officials of the major species. He still remembered every word. The humans breed quickly and think violently. Within 2 centuries, they will become a threat. We recommend containment now and elimination later, once they have served their purpose as a buffer against the outer territories. The galaxy had planned to use humanity as shields and then throw them away. They had smiled and welcomed Earth into the Concord while secretly planning genocide. So humanity had smiled back, and they had built the Defiance. "Admiral," another officer called out, "we're detecting a sensor drone at the edge of the construction zone. Origin." His expression did not change. "They found us faster than expected. How much did it see?" "Unknown, sir. It's transmitting data back to space." The Admiral thought for a moment. Then he straightened his uniform and looked at the massive ship before him. "Let them see," he said quietly. "Let them wonder, let them fear." He turned to his crew. These men and women had worked in secret for decades. They had missed birthdays and weddings. They had grown old in this frozen corner of space, building humanity's answer to a hostile universe. "Begin final power-up sequence," Admiral ordered. "It's time to wake her up." Deep inside the Defiance, the main reactor began to increase its output. Energy flowed through systems that alien scientists would not understand for 1,000 years. The ship's AI, Athena, opened her digital eyes for the first time and began to think. The power output climbed higher and higher. It passed the level of a nuclear plant, then 100 nuclear plants, then 1,000. It kept climbing. On Prime, 18,000 light-years away, a sensor technician stared at his screen in confusion. Then confusion turned to fear. "Commander," he shouted, "we're detecting an energy spike from the Sol system." Oran walked over to the screen. "What kind of spike?" I don't understand the readings, sir. The power output is..." The technician's voice trailed off. "Speak clearly." "Sir, for a moment, our sensors registered the birth of a new star in human space." Oran felt something he had not felt in many years. It was cold and unfamiliar. It took him a moment to recognize it as fear. Across the galaxy, hundreds of species detected the same energy signature. Scientists checked their instruments and checked them again. They sent messages to each other, asking the same questions. What was that? Where did it come from? What could possibly generate that much power? In the cloud, the UES Defiance hung in the darkness like a sleeping dragon that had finally opened its eyes. Admiral watched the power reading stabilize and felt pride swell in his chest. "Power up complete," an officer announced. "All systems functioning within normal parameters. The Defiance is fully operational." Opened a secure channel to Earth. Ambassador Vance's face appeared on his screen. She looked tired from another day of humiliation at the Concord Summit. The Admiral said, "It's done, she's awake." The ambassador closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, they were bright with emotion. "After all these years." "After all these years," agreed. "The next time they laugh at us, we'll have something to show them." Far away, the Concord was already reacting. Emergency meetings were called. Intelligence agencies scrambled for information. Fear spread through the halls of power like poison in water. The humans had built something impossible, something terrifying. And now the whole galaxy was about to find out what happened when you pushed humanity too far. 200 warships waited at the border of human space. They were the finest vessels of the Dominion, armed with weapons that could reduce cities to ash in seconds. High Commander Oran stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the stars with all 4 of his arms clasped behind his back. "Any sign of the human vessel?" he asked. "Not yet, Commander. Our scouts report it left the construction zone 3 hours ago. Oran made a sound of annoyance. The Galactic Concord had ordered this inspection fleet to human space immediately after detecting that impossible energy spike. Their mission was simple: find whatever the humans had built and demand they surrender it for dismantling. The humans would comply, of course. They always did. They had no choice. 47 converted cargo ships could not stand against 200 warships. "Commander," a sensor officer shouted. "Contact emerging from nowhere, sir. No hyperspace signature, it just appeared." Oran turned to the main. For a moment he saw nothing but empty space. Then his eyes found it and his blood turned cold. The ship was black against the blackness of space, visible only because it blocked out the stars behind it. It was enormous. Oran had seen space stations smaller than this vessel. Weapon batteries covered its hull like scales on some prehistoric monster. Strange energy patterns danced across its surface, patterns that his instruments could not identify. That's impossible," he whispered. The human ship stopped directly in front of the fleet. It did not slow down or decelerate. It simply stopped, as if the laws of physics did not apply to it. A communication request appeared on the screen. Oran straightened his uniform and accepted it. A human woman appeared. She was small, with dark hair cut short and eyes that held no fear. Her uniform was simple and black, with a single golden symbol on her chest. "This is Captain of the United Earth Ship Defiance," she said. Her voice was calm and polite. "We received reports of an armed fleet entering our territory. Is there something we can help you with?" Oran tried to control his voice. "I am High Commander Oran of the Dominion. We are here on behalf of the Galactic Concord to inspect your construction. You will power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded." Captain did not blink. "I'm afraid that won't be possible, Commander. The Defiance is a sovereign vessel of the United Earth Federation. We don't recognize the Concord's authority to board our ships without permission." "You don't have a choice," Oran snapped. "Look at the forces arrayed against you. One ship cannot stand against 200. "Perhaps," said, "but I think you should scan our vessel before making any decisions." Oran gestured to his sensor officer. The officer began running deep scans of the human ship. As the data came in, his scales turned pale. "Commander, the readings don't make sense. That ship's reactor output it's higher than our entire fleet combined. The hull material is unknown. The weapons systems." He looked up with wide eyes. "Sir, each of those main guns is generating more power than our planetary defense grid." The other bridge officers had gone silent. They stared at their screens with growing horror. Captain spoke again. "We built the Defiance to defend ourselves, Commander. We've spent 40 years working on this ship. Every scientist, every engineer, every resource we had went into her construction. We've had a long time to prepare." "This is impossible," Oran said. "Humans are primitives. You can't have technology like this." "You never asked what we could do," replied. "You only told us what you thought we were. There's a difference." Oran felt rage building inside him. These humans, these insects, dared to speak to him this way. He had commanded fleets for 3 centuries. He had conquered species and burned worlds. He would not be intimidated by one ship. "All vessels," he ordered through the fleet channel. "Open fire, destroy that ship." 200 warships unleashed their weapons at once. Plasma beams, particle cannons, antimatter torpedoes, and kinetic rounds filled the space between the fleet and the Defiance. It was enough firepower to shatter a continent. The barrage struck the human vessel. Light filled every. Energy readings spiked so high that sensors burned out across the fleet. When the light faded, the Defiance was still there. Its hull showed no damage, no scorching, no breaches, no signs that it had been hit at all. The strange patterns on its surface had grown brighter, as if the ship had absorbed the attack and enjoyed it. Oran could not speak. Around him, his officers stared in disbelief. "Quantum lattice armor," Captain explained. Her voice was still calm. "It absorbs energy weapons and redistributes the force across the entire hull. Your attack actually recharged our secondary systems. Thank you for that." "Fire again," Oran screamed. "Keep firing." The fleet fired again and again. Minutes passed. The Defiance sat motionless, taking everything they could throw at it. Not a single weapon left a mark. Finally, the guns fell silent. They had exhausted their ready ammunition. Many ships were venting heat from overworked weapons systems. Looked at something off-screen. "Athena, please target the third moon of the gas giant behind the enemy fleet. Helios Cannon number 1, 2% power." A section of the Defiance's hull began to glow. It started as a dull red, then orange, then white, then a blue so bright it hurt to look at. A beam of light shot from the ship. It passed through the fleet without touching a single vessel and struck the moon 200,000 kilometers away. The moon exploded. Not cracked, not shattered. It simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there. The next moment there was an expanding cloud of superheated gas where a celestial body used to be. Every sensor in the fleet recorded the same data. That shot had been 2% of one weapon's power. The Defiance had dozens of identical weapons. "That moon was uninhabited," said. "I wanted to make sure of that before firing. We don't kill unless we have to." Oran's legs felt weak. His mind struggled to understand what he was seeing. The humans had built a ship that could destroy worlds with a fraction of its power, and they had hidden it until now. "Why," he managed to ask, "why build something like this?" "Because 40 years ago, we intercepted a conquered transmission." Eyes hardened. "A secret vote to exterminate humanity once we were no longer useful. You planned to use us as shields against the outer territories and then wipe us out." Oran remembered that vote. He had supported it. "The Defiance is our answer," continued. "We don't want war, we don't want conquest, we just want to survive, and now, finally, we can." She leaned forward slightly. "Go home, Commander. Tell the conquered what you saw here today. Tell them that humanity is no longer the weak species they can push around. Tell them that if they come for us again, we will be ready." The communication ended. Oran stood in silence for a long moment. Then, slowly, he turned to his navigation officer. "Set course for space," he ordered. His voice was hollow. "Maximum speed." The fleet turned and fled. Behind them, the Defiance watched them go. On her bridge, Captain let out a breath she had been holding. Her hands were shaking slightly. She hid them behind her back. "Athena, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them the demonstration was successful." "Message sent, Captain," the AI responded. "I am also detecting thousands of sensor drones from multiple species observing us. The entire galaxy is watching." Nodded. "Good, let them watch, let them see." Humanity had been treated like children for 60 years. They had been mocked and threatened and planned for extinction. They had endured it all with patience and silence. But now they had the Defiance, and everything was about to change. Across the stars, in council chambers and military headquarters and government buildings, the footage of the battle spread. Species that had never taken humanity seriously watched a single ship humble the galaxy's most feared fleet. The humans had never been primitive. They had never been weak. They had been preparing. And now the whole galaxy knew what they were capable of. The Great Council Chamber of Prime had never seen such chaos. 4,000 species had sent their representatives to this emergency session. They filled the enormous room from floor to ceiling, floating, standing, crawling, and hovering in their designated areas. And all of them were shouting. Ambassador Vance stood at humanity's small platform at the back of the chamber. She watched the pandemonium with a calm expression. Inside, her heart was racing with a mixture of fear and satisfaction. The footage from the border incident played on giant screens throughout the room. Over and over, delegates watched the Defiance absorb the firepower of 200 warships without a scratch. Over and over, they watched a single shot vaporize a moon. High Commander Oran stood before the council, his silver scales dull with stress. He had aged 10 years in the past week. "I am telling you what I saw with my own eyes," he said. "That ship is more powerful than anything in our combined arsenals. The humans have created a weapon that makes our fleets look like children's toys." A elder rose from her seat. "How is this possible? Humans have been spacefaring for barely a century. We have been among the stars for 50,000 years." "They hid their true capabilities," Oran replied. "They let us believe they were weak while they built that monster in secret." The chamber erupted again. Accusations flew. Species blamed each other for not watching the humans more closely. Others demanded immediate military action. A few quietly wondered if they should try to ally with humanity instead. Then a new voice cut through the noise. It was old and dry and carried a weight that silenced everyone. They had spoken. Every head turned to look at them. They were the oldest species in the galaxy. They had been among the stars when most current species were still learning to use fire. They rarely attended council sessions. They almost never spoke. The elder was ancient beyond measure. Its body was frail and wrapped in ceremonial robes, but its eyes were sharp and filled with something that looked like fear. "We have seen this before," the elder said. "Long ago, a species that seemed weak, a species that endured mockery and abuse, a species that waited and planned and built in secret. We remember." The chamber was completely silent. "What happened to them?" the elder asked. They did not answer. It simply turned its gaze to the screens showing the Defiance and said nothing more. The council chair, a large creature called struck his staff against the floor. "We must vote on a response. The human vessel poses an unprecedented threat to galactic stability." Stepped forward, "May I address the council?" Reluctant permission was granted. She walked to the central platform, aware of thousands of hostile eyes watching her every step. "You call our ship a threat," she said, "but you have not asked why we built it." "We don't need to ask," Oran snapped. "You built it to threaten us, to intimidate the conquered." "No," his voice was firm. "We built it to survive." She pulled out a small device and pressed a button. A recording began to play through the chamber's speakers. It was an old transmission, slightly distorted by age. "The humans breed quickly and think violently," a voice said. "Within 2 centuries, they will become a threat. We recommend containment now and elimination later, once they have served their purpose as a buffer against the outer territories." The chamber went silent again, recognized several of the voices on the recording. So did many delegates. "We intercepted this transmission 40 years ago," continued. "A secret vote to use humanity as expendable shields and then wipe us out when we were no longer useful. You smiled at us. You welcomed us to the conquered, and the whole time you were planning genocide." Oran tried to speak, but no words came out. "The Defiance is not a weapon of conquest," said. "It is a weapon of survival. We built it because we had no choice. You gave us no choice." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the council chair struck his staff again. "Regardless of historical circumstances, the human vessel represents an unacceptable threat to galactic peace. We must vote on containment measures." The vote was fast. 3,847 species voted in favor. Only 12 voted against. The Sol containment accords were passed. The council chair read the terms aloud. The Defiance was declared an existential class threat and made illegal under galactic law. Humanity was ordered to surrender or destroy the vessel within 30 standard cycles. All trade with humans was forbidden. Any species that aided humanity would face severe punishment. And finally, A joint enforcement fleet of 10,000 warships from dozens of species would assemble and move to Sol space to ensure compliance. "What is humanity's response?" the chair asked. Looked around the chamber. She saw fear and anger and hatred. She saw species that had looked down on humanity for 60 years now terrified of what humans had created. "No," she said. The single word echoed through the silent chamber. "Excuse me," the chair said. "Our answer is no." His voice was clear and strong. "We will not surrender the Defiance. We will not destroy it. We will not comply with your demands." "You cannot refuse," Oran shouted. 10,000 ships will enforce these accords. Then 10,000 ships will learn the same lesson your 200 learned. Met his eyes without flinching. The Defiance was built to protect humanity from exactly this scenario. A galaxy united against us. Fleets coming to destroy our people. We planned for this. We prepared for this. She turned to address the entire council. "You planned our extinction. You voted for our genocide. And now you're angry that we found out and protected ourselves. You call our ship illegal, but what about your secret vote to murder billions of innocent people? Was that legal?" No one answered. "We don't want war," continued. "We never wanted war. We wanted to be part of this conquered as equals, but you made that impossible. So now we stand alone with the Defiance as our shield. And we will not surrender our shield just because you're afraid of it." She walked back toward her platform. At the doorway, she paused and looked back. "Send your fleet. Send 10,000 ships or 100,000. It won't matter. Humanity will survive. The Defiance will make sure of that." Then she was gone. The council chamber exploded into chaos again. Delegates shouted at each other. Military commanders began planning. Fear and rage filled the air like a physical presence. But in a quiet corner of the chamber, the elder sat in silence. Its ancient eyes stared at nothing. It was remembering something from long ago, a threat from beyond the galaxy, a darkness that consumed civilizations. They had survived by hiding, by making themselves small and quiet and invisible. But the humans were not hiding, they were standing up, they were fighting back. The elder wondered if that made them brave or foolish. In the darkness between galaxies, something stirred. It had been dormant for millions of years, waiting for the right signal. Now it sensed something, a massive energy signature, a power source unlike anything in this galaxy. The Defiance's reactor burned like a beacon in the void. And in the darkness, ancient and terrible things began to wake up. They had smelled fear before. They had feasted on civilizations that cowered and ran. But this was different. This was not fear. This was Defiance. And it was delicious. The armada began to gather. 10,000 warships from across the galaxy prepared to march on Sol. They thought they were going to punish humanity for building a weapon. They had no idea what was coming behind them. The conquered armada arrived at the edge of Sol space 3 weeks after the emergency council vote. 10,000 warships from 40 different species formed a wall of metal and weapons that stretched across millions of kilometers. It was the largest military force assembled in galactic history. Captain stood on the bridge of the Defiance and watched them come. Her ship floated alone in the darkness, a single black shape against the endless stars. Behind her, the crew worked in tense silence. "Athena, give me a count," she said. 10,247 vessels detected, the AI responded. "Weapons are hot on all ships. They are broadcasting demands for our surrender." Nodded slowly. She had expected this. They all had. The Defiance was powerful, but even she had limits. Against 10,000 ships, victory was not certain. "Any word from Earth Command?" "Admiral sends his regards and asks that you try not to damage Sol too much." Despite everything, smiled. The old man still had his sense of humor. The lead ship of the armada hailed them, accepted the communication. High Commander Oran's face appeared on screen. He looked tired but determined. "Captain," he said, "this is your final warning. Surrender the Defiance and you will be treated fairly. Your crew will not be harmed. Continue to resist and we will be forced to destroy you." "With respect, Commander, we both know your fleet can't destroy this ship. You saw what happened to your inspection force. That was 200 ships. This is 10,000. Even the Defiance cannot stand against such numbers." Was about to respond when Athena interrupted. "Captain, I am detecting unusual readings from the outer system. Multiple contacts emerging from unknown space. Not hyperspace, something else." Oran's expression shifted. What is she talking about? More alerts filled the Defiance's bridge. Officers called out numbers that climbed higher and higher. 100 contacts, 1,000, 10,000, 20,000, 40,000. "Athena, identify those ships." The AI was silent for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried something that sounded almost like fear. Cross-referencing with historical databases. Match found. "Captain, these vessels match descriptions from archives dated 2 million years ago. They are." The word meant nothing too, but on the communication screen, Oran's scales turned white. "That's impossible," he whispered. "They are extinct. They've been extinct for millions of years." "What are?" demanded. Before Oran could answer, the newcomers broadcast a message. It was not in any language, but somehow every being who heard it understood its meaning perfectly. "We smelled your fear, now we feast." The fleet emerged from the darkness like a swarm of nightmares. Their ships were not made of metal. They were organic, grown rather than built. Massive creatures of flesh and bone and chitin that moved through space like living things. Some were small and fast. Others were larger than asteroids, their bodies bristling with biological weapons. There were 40,000 of them, and they were hungry. The conquered armada broke formation immediately. Ships that had come to destroy humanity now fled in panic. Weapons fire erupted as they descended on the fleet like predators on prey. Watched in horror as a creature wrapped itself around a cruiser. The alien ship's hull crumpled like paper. Its crew had no time to scream. "Athena, what are we looking at?" They are an extragalactic species. They consume civilizations. According to records, they destroyed over 1,000 spacefaring species 2 million years ago before going dormant. It appears they have awakened. On the screen, Oran was screaming orders. His fleet was dying around him. Conquered weapons barely scratched the bioships. For every creature they killed, 10 more took its place. "They came for us," the alien commander said. His voice was hollow with despair. "They were drawn by the energy signature. Your ship woke them up." Felt the weight of that accusation. The Defiance's reactor had burned like a beacon. It had called these monsters from the void between galaxies. She could leave. The fold space drive could take her ship anywhere instantly. She could retreat to Earth and let the conquered fleet die. These were the same species that had planned humanity's extinction. They deserved what was happening to them. But as she watched the slaughter, thought about what humanity had always wanted. Not revenge, not power, just a chance to prove they belonged among the stars. "All hands," she said, "battle stations." Her first officer stared at her. "Captain." "We're going to help them." "Sir, they came here to destroy us." "I know," straightened in her chair. "But that's not who we are. That's not what the Defiance was built for. We built her to protect humanity. And right now, protecting humanity means showing the galaxy what kind of species we are." She opened a channel to the conquered fleet. "All conquered vessels, this is Captain, form up behind the Defiance. We're going to cover your retreat." Oran's voice came back, confused and desperate. "Why? We came to destroy you." "Because that's what humans do," replied. "We help, even when it costs us everything." The Defiance surged forward into the heart of the battle. Its weapons came online with a sound like thunder. Athena, deploy all drone squadrons. Target the largest organisms first. Helios cannons full power. 50,000 human drones poured from the Defiance's bays. They moved as one, guided by Athena's impossible intelligence. They tore into the swarm like a blade through flesh. The Helios cannons fired, not at 2% power like the warning shot against the moon, not at 10 or 20%, full power. Beams of stellar fire cut across space. Each shot carried the energy of a small star. Bioships exploded by the hundreds. Creatures that had consumed civilizations died in the light of human weapons. But there were many, and they learned quickly. They adapted to human tactics. They swarmed the drone squadrons. They tried to surround the Defiance. Hull stress increasing, Athena reported. Quantum lattice armor is holding, but they are attempting to physically breach the hull. Saw it on the screens. Dozens of creatures had attached themselves to the Defiance's surface. They were trying to eat through the ship itself. Activate the Erebus Protocol, she ordered. Her officers exchanged looks. The Erebus Protocol was theoretical. It had never been tested in combat. Do it. Deep inside the Defiance, experimental systems activated. The ship generated a focused gravity field around itself, a sphere of impossible force. The creatures attached to the hull were crushed instantly. The gravity field expanded outward, catching more and more enemies. Ships and creatures alike were compressed into nothing. Matter collapsed in on itself. A black hole formed in the middle of the swarm. Thousands of bioships were pulled in. They screamed as they died, sounds that echoed through space itself. The singularity grew and grew, consuming everything in its path. Then Athena shut it down. The black hole collapsed, leaving only empty space where an army had been. 15,000 ships had been destroyed in 6 hours of fighting. The Defiance had done most of the work alone. The remaining paused. For the first time in their ancient existence, they had encountered something they could not consume, something that fought back and won. They broadcast one final message before retreating into the void. This galaxy is defended. Then they were gone. The Defiance floated in a field of debris. Around it, the surviving conquered ships drifted in shock. They had come to destroy humanity. Instead, humanity had saved them. Oran's face appeared on screen. His scales were cracked with stress. His eyes were wet with something that might have been tears. Why? He asked. His voice was barely a whisper. We came to kill you. We voted for your extinction. Why did you save us? Thought for a moment before answering. Because someone had to, she said simply, and we were the only ones who could. The communication ended, sat back in her chair and let out a long breath. Around her, her crew was cheering. They had won. Against impossible odds, against ancient monsters, they had won. But knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy had just learned what humanity was capable of, not just their weapons, not just their power. Their heart. And nothing would ever be the same again. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Saul. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Ambassador Vance walked through the halls of Prime once more, but this time no one ignored her. Every species she passed stopped to acknowledge her. Some bowed. Others made gestures of respect from their home cultures. A few simply stared with something that looked like wonder. Humanity was no longer the youngest and weakest member of the Galactic Concord. They were the species that had saved the galaxy. The Great Council chamber was full again. 4,000 species had gathered for another historic vote, but the mood was completely different from the last emergency session. Fear had been replaced by something else. Hope, perhaps, or gratitude. Captain stood beside. She wore her dress uniform and tried not to look uncomfortable. Was a warrior, not a diplomat. She preferred the bridge of her ship to political chambers. Thank you for coming, whispered. Admiral ordered me to attend. something about showing the galaxy a human face. He's right, they need to see you, the captain who saved them. Shifted uncomfortably. I just did what anyone would have done. Smiled sadly. No, that's exactly the point. Most species wouldn't have done what you did. They would have run or let their enemies die. You chose differently. The council session began. The chair struck his staff against the floor. We are gathered today to address the aftermath of the incursion and to reconsider our relationship with humanity. The first speaker will be High Commander Oran of the Dominion. Oran rose slowly. He had aged decades in 3 months. The proud commander who had once mocked humanity was gone. In his place stood someone humbled by what he had witnessed. I have served the conquered for 300 years, he began. I have fought in dozens of wars. I have seen species rise and fall, but I have never seen anything like what humanity did at Sol. He turned to look at. We came to destroy them. 10,000 ships, the largest fleet in galactic history, assembled to force them to surrender or die. And when they attacked, when ancient monsters fell upon us from the void, the humans could have left. Their ship could have escaped easily. We would have died and humanity would have been safe. His voice cracked slightly. Instead, they stayed. They fought. They bled for us. Captain risked her ship and her crew to save the very fleet that came to kill her people. He paused to compose himself. I have asked myself why. Why would they do this? And I think I finally understand. Humans don't fight because they hate their enemies. They fight because they love what they're protecting. And in that moment at Sol, they chose to protect us, all of us, even those who had wronged them. He bowed his head toward. On behalf of the Dominion, I apologize for our actions against humanity. We were wrong, about everything. He sat down. The chamber was silent. Then the elder rose to speak. The ancient being moved slowly to the central platform. Every eye in the room watched. 2 million years ago my species faced the elder said. Its voice was thin but carried through the chamber. They came for us as they came for you. We were powerful then. We had great fleets and mighty weapons, but we were afraid. The elder's eyes grew distant, remembering. We hid, we made ourselves small and quiet. We let them pass by, let them consume other civilizations while we cowered in the darkness. We survived, but we lost something. Our courage, our pride, our will to stand. It turned to look at the human delegation. For 2 million years we have lived with that shame. We watched younger species rise and fall. We never helped. We never intervened. We told ourselves it was wisdom to stay hidden, but it was fear. It was always fear. The elder approached. For a long moment they simply looked at each other, ancient eyes meeting young ones. You did what we could not, the elder said. In 60 years of existence among the stars, you built what we never had the courage to create, not just a weapon. The defiance is impressive, yes, but any species can build weapons. What you built was something rarer, the will to use your strength for others, even those who hate you, even those who would destroy you. The elder bowed. It was the deepest bow that had given to any species in recorded history. Humanity has shown us what we forgot, that true power is not in weapons or fleets. It is in the choice to protect, to stand when others run, to fight when others hide. The elder returned to its seat. The chamber erupted in applause. Species that had never agreed on anything joined together to honor the humans in their midst. When the noise faded, the council chair spoke. In light of recent events, several motions have been put forward. First, the Sol Containment Accords are hereby repealed unanimously. The UES Defiance is reclassified from existential class threat to Guardian Prime. More applause, felt tears forming in her eyes. Second, a new initiative is proposed. The Galactic Vigil will be established to protect all conquered species from extragalactic threats. This initiative will be led by humanity, with the Defiance serving as its flagship. Looked at in surprise, lead, they want us to lead. Third, All species are invited to contribute vessels and personnel to the Galactic Vigil, under human command. The vote was unanimous. 4,000 species agreed. Humanity would lead the galaxy's defense. After the session, stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city of Prime. The alien metropolis stretched to the horizon, filled with buildings and vehicles and beings from across the cosmos. Once, humanity had dreamed of seeing such wonders. Now they were being asked to protect them. Joined her. "How do you feel?" asked. "Terrified," admitted. 60 years ago, we were burning fossil fuels and arguing about borders. Now we're supposed to guard the galaxy. The will come back someday, they are certain of it. I know, and we need to be ready. Looked up at the stars. We'll need to build more ships, train crews from other species, create a real defense force. The Council has already approved resources. 20 species have volunteered ships and personnel. More are joining every day. Nodded slowly. Then we'd better get to work. 1 year later, Captain stood on the bridge of the Defiance once more. But the bridge looked different now. Beside her human officers there were and a dozen other species. They worked together, trained together, lived together. Athena spoke. "Captain, the fleet is assembled." Looked at where once the Defiance had stood alone, now 100 ships flew in formation around her. The first fleet of the Galactic Vigil. Human ships and alien ships, united under one banner. And in shipyards across human space, more vessels were being built. Not copies of the Defiance, but ships designed to work alongside her. A new generation of protectors. Admiral's voice came through the communication system. He was old now, retired to Earth, but he still liked to check in. "How does it feel, Captain, leading the galaxy's defense?" Thought about the question. She thought about the years of mockery humanity had endured, the plans for their extinction, the day they had revealed the Defiance and watched the galaxy tremble. She thought about the choice she had made at Sol, to protect instead of destroy, to save instead of flee. "It feels like what we were meant to do," she said. "We spent 60 years being told we didn't belong, that we were too young, too primitive, too violent. But maybe that's exactly what the galaxy needed. A species young enough to still believe in protecting others, primitive enough to fight when logic says to run, violent enough to stand against the darkness." She looked at her mixed crew, human and alien working side by side. "We're not the most powerful species in the galaxy. We're not the oldest but we might be the most stubborn, and sometimes that's enough." Outside the stars stretched endlessly in all directions. Somewhere out there, in the void between galaxies, waited. Other threats lurked in the darkness. Unknown dangers that would one day test the galaxy's defenders. But when that day came, humanity would be ready. The Defiance would answer. And the galaxy would know that it was protected by the most stubborn, most determined, most impossibly hopeful species ever to reach the stars. Humanity had spent 60 years being told they were nothing. Now the galaxy looked to them for everything. And they would not let the galaxy down.